Hello, hello. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so grateful that you're spending time with us and your interest in today's topic from stuck to strategic. And, I gather from the reaction and the conversations leading into today's sessions, a lot of us in the philanthropy world are feeling that uncertainty. And then that can lead to feeling stuck, but our missions must continue. So we're going to talk all about that today. So again, thanks for joining us. We're at the top of the hour, so we are going to get started. My name is Catherine Bergerson. I am the Vice President of Marketing, part of the Insightful team. I will be joined in just a moment by Sophia Shaw. She is the founder of PlanPerfect, who will join our discussion. As we kick things off, I want to let you know today's session is being recorded and you will receive a copy via email after the session. On our agenda today, I'll quickly share a little background and information about Insightful, and then we will jump right into the program and conversation. We are happy to take your questions. We want this to be interactive and informative for you. We'll do our best to get to all of your questions. If we happen to run short on time, we will commit to getting back to you. So please enter your questions. You'll see some icons at the top of your screen. Just click on that chat icon, type your questions in. Also, you'll see an icon for handouts. It's a paper clip and a piece of paper. If you click on that, it'll open up. You can download those handouts at any time during the session. A little bit about us. Insightful is powered by our parent company, which is Newsbank. And Newsbank is a leading news and information provider aggregating sources from all around the world, bringing teams access to credible, vetted global news, many of which of these sources are unique to our company. All are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from any device. And I am proud to share with you that Newsbank has been a family-owned company for more than 50 years. And now Insightful is part of Newsbank's philanthropy division, and it's a software that draws upon these news resources to help nonprofits fill in information gaps, to get to know more about donors and prospects in order to promote better philanthropic engagement. Recently, we added more than 27,000 obituaries and death notices to our collection, and that number is actually even growing daily, which makes Insightful the most comprehensive information source available. And we believe that it is this simple. When you know more, you can deepen donor relationships and raise more to do more good in the world. Which brings us to why we are here today. We have these deeply important missions, but with uncertainty can come feeling frozen, which then impacts governance and fundraising and mission delivery. And so we have with us today Sophia Shaw. Sophia is the founder of PlanPerfect, which is a strategic planning platform that is built for small to mid-sized nonprofits that blends technology, governance tools, consulting, and coaching. She is the former president and CEO of the Chicago Botanic Garden, where she oversaw record growth in attendance, membership, and philanthropy. She's a former adjunct faculty member at Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management, where she taught social impact. She served as a board chair, board member, and volunteer of nonprofits. Welcome, Sophia. Hello. Yes, let me help.
Sorry, I was muted. Nice to see you, Catherine. Thank you so much for having me. It was really great to be here, and I really wish I had a tool like Insightful when I was stewarding and cultivating donors in my prior roles. It's really hard to keep track of all of that information, and those relationships are so important. So I'm really glad to be here and get to know more about what you do as well.
Oh, well, thank you. And your expertise is certainly welcome. I know we've got that kind of Chicago, Southwest Florida connection, as well as a background in philanthropy. And so I think that there's a lot of good discussion and synergy that'll happen today. Yes. And so, okay, let's get right down to it. The philanthropy world is never calm. It always seems like there's something, but it just feels like right now and recently there has been a lot of shakeups. So I'd love to start with getting your take on, the current climate. What are you hearing right now from other nonprofit leaders?
Thanks for asking. My partner in PlanPerfect, Adam Wolford, and I have a remarkable opportunity to talk to nonprofit leaders from all over the world. In fact, this morning I was up way before dawn talking to a nonprofit leader in Hong Kong, yesterday somebody in Nepal. So the person-to-person contacts we're having with nonprofit leaders are now not only in the US, but around the world as we talk about our PlanPerfect tool and strategy, but we hear a lot about what's on their minds. And I'd say that what's on their mind is going into about 5 different buckets of what's making them scared, what's giving them opportunities to think positively about the future. And although it's only 5 years ago, the first one is really COVID's lasting effects. I mean, we sort of put it now in the back of our minds, like, okay, we survived that time, we're out and about again. But the first thing that is on people's minds are COVID lasting effects, and that it not only caused people to change their business models or accelerate their digital adoption, but it also forced a lot of closures in the sector, and it also made people scared. Could this happen again? The plan that I had before COVID had to be, as I heard, thrown out the window. I've heard that phrase so many times. So what does that even mean for planning for the future? Can we? The second big bucket of anxiety or things that people are talking about is this volatile funding cycle. And charitable giving has been uneven, and Giving USA reports that there's a slight increase, but not for inflation adjusted giving. And that growth is really accelerated in the major donors and the donor advised funds, where people are really parking money. They're not giving it from their donor advised funds, but the participation by everyday households into philanthropy continues to fall, unfortunately. The third big bucket is this rising demand for strategy, professionalization, and impact measurement. So as there are more software tools on the market to really analyze the outcomes of giving and the impact of nonprofits, more people are asking for nonprofits to be delivering strategic plans, impact measurement, and a lot of organizations aren't really prepared to do that. They don't know how to do it. If a nonprofit is founded by an expert in some topic, maybe they're not really knowledgeable how to make those. The fourth is just the pressure of foundations. There's a lot of pressure on foundations to deliver more money into the sector to help nonprofits, given a lot of the cuts at the federal level, which is my fifth point, is just a changing and much more complex global and political context, with the uncertainty about what is been changing under this current administration for policy and also for funding. So this all together, these 5 points, just really results in a time of both growth in the need for nonprofits to deliver on their impact, really meet their constituents where they are and help more and more people, but also a fragility in the number of nonprofits is declining. I pulled up something from the IRS that Giving USA notes that there are a lot of consolidations and closures, especially among smaller organizations. I just feel that what's happening right now is that there is this, people are frozen, and that's why we named the webinar today the way we did. And unfortunately, when we're frozen, we can't do anything. We can't better meet the needs of the people who depend on us. It's the same thing in life. If you are lost or you don't know where to go, or in anything, if you just freeze, you don't go anywhere. So what's so important right now is that we need to move forward, because why is it so important for nonprofits to act right now, even when the future feels unclear? It's because doing nothing is still a decision, and it almost always puts the organization further behind in serving its mission. So one of the things that we did in making PlanPerfect, but this can be done on any tool, on any platform, with consultants, or not with consultants, or really just working on a blank piece of paper and really getting down to what are some first steps in trying to figure out how to get unstuck. Think of other ways in times of our lives where we feel that way. Maybe we're driving someplace with our GPS and the signal goes out, or prior to GPS days, maybe we just went out and got a little lost. What's the best thing to do right then? The best thing to do right then is to take stock of where we are, use the most basic clues and cues we have, both in ourselves and in nature. Like, okay, and this is a more metaphor here, but like, where is the sun rising? Where is the sun setting? What direction was I going in when I lost my way? Where am I going? Who can I ask along this path? So I always like to break down these much more conceptual and complex ideas into, okay, what are the practical things we can do? The first practical thing we can do is to figure out, is our mission statement still one that we really believe in, or has, because of these 5 things I mentioned at the outset, has it changed? Can we still deliver upon that? And then are there conversations that we can be having with our board to create a plan for the future that we can really achieve, and something that's ambitious enough, but not too ambitious that we can't fulfill?
Got it. Yes.
So we feel that the best way to get moving is to create a simple and clear plan that is informed by accurate and high quality information that everybody can trust, and that talking first about strategic planning, or talking about planning business plan if you're in a business as opposed to a nonprofit, and what it is and what it isn't and what makes a good plan, is one of the first things that can be done, and really building that into the culture of the organization. So looking at what the goals and objectives are every month and seeing if you are aligned to them, or if not, how to pivot. There used to be this time where you'd make a 5-10-year strategic plan, and then, those of us remember, we put it in a binder on the shelf in the drawer. No longer is that necessary. It's like maybe an exercise plan that you might have software for, that understands that last week that you weren't feeling well, so maybe you only ran twice rather than 3 times, and your pace was slower. So then it adjusts for the way that you're training for the future. It's the same thing with strategic planning. It should be done in such a way that it's not on the shelf, but that it's in your life, and that you can adjust it and be agile as new things happen.
As you mentioned that, and that adjustment and evaluation, that is really, what the information that goes into informing the plan. And the old saying, knowledge is power. So, how does strong information gathering help organizations make that strategic plan so that they can respond effectively, for a variety of circumstances? Because you're going to get sick sometimes, or the things are going to change, whether dramatically or a little.
Right. I mean, good decisions, and this is one of the reasons why the work you do is so important. That good decisions start with good information, and in the case of strategic planning, that means interviewing, surveying, and researching both the donors and the people we serve, or the causes we serve in our in our nonprofits. We need to understand on the donor side, what are our donors' passions, their important life moments, and then really connect with them personally, whether that's face-to-face or via Zoom or through a survey tool or direct outreach, understanding what the causes are that they want to support or why they support our organization. And then, and this is something that I think that a lot of people have not done enough of, is surveying, interviewing, researching, all these things I just said about the donors, doing the same work for the people we serve. And if that means doing it in a language that's not English, then we should be doing it in a language that's not English. If it's done in a survey tool, fine, but if it's done in person, done in focus groups. But oftentimes, those of us who lead or give to nonprofit causes, we're doing so because we believe we have a vision for the lives of the people we're trying to help, but that may not be their life. I mean, we can't assume that's because somebody is in this situation or that situation that the solutions that we would bring as somebody not in those situations has any relevance whatsoever. So if we're working in this direct service kind of nonprofit leadership, asking people, are we meeting their needs? Where are our blind spots? How we can better serve them is absolutely critical. And especially in a lot of nonprofit boards that are made up of people who are very similar to one another. Maybe they've recruited each other because they all belong to the same club or house of worship or alumni group or whatever, condominium. Then there's this groupthink. And how can 10 people with this kind of background understand the needs of people in this background? That's almost impossible. And we wouldn't want people to judge us that way, so we shouldn't do it to others. So this interviewing, getting information is absolutely critical to making a plan that is not only has the right ambitions, but is also achievable to the goals that we're trying to solve.
That makes so much sense, particularly in the wake of COVID and economic changes, to go back and reevaluate. Maybe their needs have changed. The world has changed and shifted, which you mentioned also, the role of leadership, where you started to touch on that. Let's move into that a little bit more. And talk about the dynamic between the board chair and the executive director, and what that partnership and how that works in this whole dynamic of getting stuck and moving forward and that push and pull.
Sure. The relationship between the board chair and the executive director or CEO is the most important relationship in a nonprofit. And having those two people be on the same team doesn't mean that they need to be always seeing eye to eye, but being on the same team, supporting each other, realizing that each is the other's ambassador, and finding a way to work together on behalf of the organization. Because, as we have to all remember, it's not about us. It's not our office. It's not our boardroom. It is the organizations, and it's the missions, and it's the people we serve who should be put at the center of this, not ourselves. So that relationship between these two people is so essential. But that's really where oftentimes the biggest issues arise. So the board has the responsibility, the governance of overseeing the organization, and the executive director reports to them. And yet the executive director on a day-to-day basis is responsible for doing all the operations of the organization. And that as board chairs change, the expectations upon that executive director often change. When I was CEO of the Chicago Botanic Garden, I had 3 different board chairs in my tenure, each with a completely different personality and set of expectations for me. The first one was very supportive, very nurturing. He had 4 daughters. I was a very young woman. He was as supportive and kind and trying to help, really lift me up as anybody could ever dream of having. The second one, she's still a good friend. I'm going to see her next week. But she was a very high-powered person in investment banking, and she was never around. So I was completely on my own. That's a completely different skill set of, you know. And then the third, literally, I'd come into my office and he'd be sitting in my chair. Which
how to navigate then your style to
exactly. So getting unstuck means really figuring out what are those styles, as you were saying, Catherine, and figuring how to get into a place of understanding and making your process for strategic planning aligned around that.
And then as the executive director too, the turning around and how to communicate that to the staff and have the staff understand that, dynamics might change or feel a little bit different too without totally disrupting the flow of their everyday work. Yeah,
that's a really, really good point. And there are two things I might say in that is the first is that's why having a strategic plan is so essential, because it shouldn't matter to the staff if the board chair changes, if everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing every day. If everybody knows why they're showing up to work, because their organization is intending to deliver this on this promise, and this is the rubric of decision making, then it shouldn't matter who's in charge necessarily. I mean, I'm speaking generally. And the second is I've seen is that sometimes the executive director will speak his or her own mind about the board chair in public, and that's not, I even though that's very tempting and some way to potentially like gain people into your trust, it's probably not the best in the long term.
Yeah, tempting is a good you can see how that feeling exists, but yes, to keep the eye on the mission is the most important there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, but board member, that is just such a delicate, and lots of personalities, and they do turnover. And like you said, there's the highly engaged and highly involved. How do you ensure those who want to be very engaged, avoid that overreach? That line is delicate.
The line's delicate. I think one way to do this, understanding that personalities are always hard to shift. Some people just have a natural tendency to want to meddle. But the one way to do this is to have governance training in your boardroom, or to join one of the very fine community foundation board training sessions or something that's online, whether it's BoardSource or some other organization that does board governance education programs, to really teach board members what is their role and what is the role of the staff. And I always like to have, a photograph when I do this is something with a highway with two lanes. The lane being, one lane is the board and one lane is the team, and trying to really figure out who's in which lane, and then where is there obvious crossover. Strategy is one place where there is obvious crossover, because it's making a strategic plan is a real collaboration between the board and the staff. At the end of the day, the board is responsible for the strategy and having that organization achieve its strategy and deliver upon it. But it is the executive director or CEO's role in really shaping what that is, and can they fulfill that in their leadership. So this is a very, very tricky line, and especially in a place like in Southwest Florida, where our lives overlap, Catherine, is that there's so many people who serve on the boards who are fully retired from their day jobs, so, or their careers, and oftentimes in those cases, those leaders, so well intended, can make their nonprofit board service their full-time job, which is not always of benefit to the staff team.
That is when you talk about board training, and in my experience in nonprofits is in Southwest Florida too, so I understand and have experience with what you're talking about. And it's often delicate for retired career people who are often very successful in their careers and held positions of leadership, to suggest that they need more training in other areas, and that can just sometimes broaching those conversations, it can be hard, but they're necessary for the long-term success.
Yeah, it is tricky, and I think nobody's perfect at this. But even maybe focusing the training on the differences between for-profit accounting and nonprofit accounting could be helpful. Like, because there are real differences in how nonprofits account for their financials, and even maybe doing some of that, or really finding the ways that the board members can offer and deliver upon meaningful and mission-centered engagement. So, for example, my husband is he's an usher at the Gulf Shore Playhouse, and although he was in a very senior CEO role in his career, but what that allows him to do is it brings him a lot of joy to do something totally different. And also then when he gives feedback on the Playhouse, then he actually is doing it from the point that I was making earlier about like seeing how actual people coming to the performances are reacting. So, maybe there's some more volunteerism that could help there as well.
Absolutely. I think the volunteerism example is a huge one. If you can put yourself in the role of the staff in any way, or that really is an eye-opener. And then also, the funding, how funding works, because it is much different. Yeah. For all the similarities, there are different. Mm-hmm. Okay, so beyond leadership, let's move into the development teams and the importance of empowering those development teams. So many in our audience here, often who come to our sessions, are in they're gift officers, prospect researchers, and maybe they aren't necessarily in control of those big picture decisions, and they're sitting, what's your advice for those people who are sitting there saying, oh, I wish I could tell them that, but here's the reality of my world.
That is a really, really good point. Well, the first thing I want to tell everybody who sits in those seats, who's on this call or who may listen to it afterwards, is thank you. Nothing is possible in achieving the mission that touches the people or the places that we as nonprofit leaders serve without the frontline staff. And that goes from major gifts officers to people on the operations side, annual fund, but also working the events. The events are so important. The check-in process, everything. When you check into an event and you met with a smile from the development person who is meeting you there, that goes a long way to raising positive feeling about the organization. And yes, true, you can't really change the way that the board or your boss or your boss's boss's boss is acting, but you can really do thoughtful research on the donors who are engaged. Who are the people coming back over and over again? Why? What is really touching them to continue to come and be engaged in the organizations? You can also really recognize the milestones in their lives. Sending out a quick birthday note, or recognizing that somebody has passed away and reaching out to their spouse and expressing your condolences. Keeping your CRM up to date. Keeping all the records up to date, that is a tremendous way to do really good work, because there's nothing worse, which I have done, is reach out to a donor or a prospective donor and refer to a spouse who has passed. And if you keep the records up to date and you notify everyone about divorces and births of children, so that is just tremendously positive for the organization. Then also reporting up on what are the things that really spark joy in these donors, and that is so important in building a strategic plan or any kind of strategy, philanthropic strategy to move forward.
I can't help but think of insightful when you say that, in terms of how do you stay on top of those changes. And there, some come through conversations you have, some come through screening tools, but some of it is in the news. And if that's public information, often people expect you to know it, and then to have it in your CRM so that the whole organization knows it. Share that information is important and
exactly key. Yeah, and you can get it, and it's harder and harder to get. We used to all read one newspaper. We used to always read, used to be one paper that would come, and there would be, these are all the obituaries, and you could then really determine, but it's really hard to do that. So it's also paying real attention to club notices. Clubs are really quite good about sending out, in the category of people who are deceased, sending out notices about that. It's also getting away from our desks. I think that we now equate sitting at our desks as work. We're clearly doing work. We're doing work now, but if we're not getting out and going to the park or the beach or the concert, or meeting people in our actual human form, we don't hear and see the nuances of people's lives, or see somebody who is now carrying a grandchild in their arms, or somebody who's declined. We have to do both. The news is important, but also the human interaction is so essential to knowing who each other are, and then also being able to serve each other. If we just are spinning the narratives in our own minds about who people are, we can't really meet them where they are.
That is so true. And I think some of that is a COVID hangover, generational change, technology change, that it's easy to fill your time more doing things, but without actually showing up in person. And there just is no substitute for that face-to-face. And it doesn't have to be long, a coffee or a part, just being in the same surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And that leads to a real issue that we all face in philanthropy, is so you make those connections and you get a good rapport going, and then staff turns over, or the executive director turns over, and that has been a long issue in philanthropy. But right now it feels like it's even a little bit more intense. Can you talk about that turnover? How do you maintain stability and keep yourself from getting stuck during those times of change?
Right, and again, I go back to what is the strategy of the organization, because I think that people stay around in those development roles, fundraising roles, event roles, when they really feel very connected to the mission, and they know what their job is, that they have realistic expectations placed upon them, and that they know they have the tools in their hands to meet those expectations. I think that what we're seeing now in this maybe moment of stuck or panic is that there's just more and more pressure to raise more and more money, because cost of living is going up, insurance is going up. So essentially the vast majority of most nonprofits' budgets are in payroll. So you need to then raise the money to help meet those increasing budgets, but then you can't just say to somebody, "Oh, Sophia, just go raise another $1 million," or whatever, without giving any ladder framework. So I think when there are clearer roles, more realistic expectations, and acknowledgement that the job is really hard. It's really hard to form all these relationships, track all the relationships, remember everybody's name when you run into them in the grocery store, even when you like your kids in your arms and you're rushing and you're at the dentist or whatever it is. These jobs are really hard, but they're really important, and these are all problems that we can fix. Boards have the power to fix them, and the executive directors have power to fix them if we really bring them to the attention, which I'm glad you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, let's talk some tangibles here for those who are in the audience. Some quick wins. What can people implement? Immediately they want to regain that forward momentum. What can they do?
Yeah, I've every night before I go to bed, I write down on a whiteboard, exactly what I want to get done the next day. So I put, I've made it. I'm pretty rigorous about it in that I don't write down things I'm not going to do. And I don't write down things that are really long-term projects. I really say, these are the things that I'm going to get done today. They're sort of ambitious, but they're not wildly ambitious. And I put down, these are the meetings I'm going to do. And then if I get them all done, I can still do more things. But I think it's keeping, especially when things feel so uncertain in the world, let's make a plan that we can achieve, and then you get that boost of adrenaline by having achieved them. So you get used to the day-to-day plan. Then someplace else, maybe on your computer, in your notes app or someplace, you can make what is my week plan? What is my goal for the week? How does this align to the overall strategy of the organization? And then like getting into what is a 90-day action plan? What can I really achieve? This is what Adam, the co-founder of PlanPerfect, and I do, is that we think in these 90-day blocks, as that's we're a newish company, so we can't determine what we're going to do 5 years from now. I mean, we can dream it, but all we can really plan for is the next 90 days. So you don't have to make just a 3 to 5 year plan. You can make a 90-day plan. We're working with nonprofits right now who are making 6-month strategic plans. So they're making a 6-month strategic plan, and then they're scheduling a board retreat 6 months from now, so that they're going to talk about that plan. How does that feel? How's that going? And then they're going to shape it into a 3 to 5 year variety plan. But we can take off chunks, just like when you're training in something you might be doing for your body in sport, or in learning how to needlepoint, or whatever it is. You can't learn to speak French overnight.
Right. I was thinking how well that applies to so many areas of life. I mean, I'm a list maker too, but also, the dreamer, and sometimes you get overwhelmed and like, well, how am I ever going to get there? And it's kind of the old, how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. Yeah. But I really like what you said about, okay, if we have a 6-month strategic plan, that seems doable. And now let's take that even into smaller chunks. And if you continue to revisit it before you're at that 6 month, and now you do have that momentum, and you've got the wins that help to continue to propel you forward. And thinking in 3 to 6 month windows feels so much more doable than 5 years, and who knows how the laws are going to change, or who.
Yeah. And still having the 5 year plan, I feel, is really
good,
important.
Right?
Yeah, you have to have it. You know where you're. It's just like in college, you wouldn't just have a 6 month, but you would have the 4 year plan, or 5 years, or whatever. Sure. But you'd also say, this in this semester, this is what I'm. This is actually probably a really good analogy. College, 4 years. But then you go semester by semester, and you set your micro goals for this. And that doesn't have to be the organization's strategic plan either. It could be your department's plan, your annual giving plan. Like right now, going into the fourth quarter, what is the vision to closing the gap to 12/31, and what can we do to do that? How can we all get out and hand sign letters, not do the printed signage of letters? How can we all make it a goal that each person on our development team is going to go to, 5 in-person things this week, not just, not to say that being on the webinar isn't great, but how we are all going to get out and go to the webinar, and how we get to actually plan our week, and then you can really celebrate those achievements. when you've wiped everything off your board in the evening or at the end of the week, you're like, yeah, I went to those 5 events. I did that. It feels really good. And then you want to even do, you want to take it to the next level the next week. It doesn't feel so exhausting that way.
I agree. I like that too, and the kind of the idea of college, and that as you go, maybe it changes a little bit, and maybe what you thought was going to be your 4-year plan doesn't wind up, but you're making progress along the way, so that as you look back, you see, wow, I did a lot in the last year, one day at a time, and that's
exactly, and that it's okay to pivot. Maybe you go in thinking you want to be a lawyer, and you actually become a musician. That's okay. As long as you're sort of understanding, okay, this was the plan that when I wanted to be a lawyer, and I actually now need to do these things in order to shift that course to become the musician. It's all of this is okay. Making a plan doesn't mean that you've failed if you haven't achieved the plan you set out to. And all it means is that when you leave your house to go someplace, you at least have a plan when you leave. And then if you decide to stop at the farmer's market or whatever, that's fine, but you can't just go out with no plan.
And I think that goes right back to the stuck to strategic, that sometimes just those small steps add up over time. And if it's 3 external meetings or 1 a day or whatever that is, okay, those little stretch goals do add up, and you aren't stuck.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about outside tools. When is it time? So you've done everything that you know how to do, or use the resources that you have. How can organizations, or how do you evaluate whether it's bringing in a consultant, outside expertise, or perhaps it's new software, testing out technology? How do we evaluate that in this whole getting unstuck lens?
Right. I mean, my kids always teach me. I always make cooking analogies. So, I think this is like when you bring in the egg beater or the blender in order to help you cook. Sometimes it's actually nicer to beat your own, and sometimes it's better just to bring in a tool. And I think there's so many cool tools out there right now. There are tools that can help you practice your pitches, tools that can help simulate donor discussions. There are tools, just like there are tax tools to help you make your taxes. There are now tools that can help you, like ours, make your strategic plan. There are tools that can help with grant making. Not all of them are going to be robust, and not all of them are fully built out. Not all of them is going to fulfill all of your goals, but even experimenting with people who are afraid of using AI right now, I just think, just go try ChatGPT. Like, just say, can you please write me a thank you note, or, brainstorm about this or that. Like, where should I go? What's a new park I haven't been to? And should I try that? Whatever it is, just experimenting with some of this, just kind of, that can really get you unstuck. And it's, is trying new things, like, even like if you play a game online, you think, oh wow, there are new ways I can use my brain, and I can use it in partnership with technology, like this egg beater.
That's so interesting that you say that about AI, and they're the people who are all in, and they're already writing their thank you notes, and I don't mean writing their whole thank you notes, using it as a prompt and to get an idea, or to change things up, or with their year-end gifts or their Giving Tuesday. If you haven't tried that yet, exactly right. You don't have to actually send the email or the thank you note. Just try it. I think that what I have found, at least, is it's helping me think of new things, or think of things more quickly, and then you can put your creativity in that energy that you would have spent building the whole thank you note, or really into bringing some more personalization or to it. Those are great. Really, it's just trying something new, and challenge your team, perhaps. or it's challenging your supervisor. Hey, this year, can we try a new tool? I researched these, softwares. Can we invest in one of them? And
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody has a free trial or some at least freemium component of their software. I mean, we have one that helps people organize their strategic planning process. It's free. And most software programs have something that's free that you can just get a taste of. And if you never use it, fine. But it's just it's sort of a brain exercise that we could all use. And there's also a nice combination. Like I highly recommend you actually don't send your thank you notes through ChatGPT, because it's at this point, I mean, you and I are agreeing there. But another thing that's sort of, I tried one time, I couldn't quite get the right words to write down to say to a friend, and I went into ChatGPT and it helped me like figure out what I was trying to say. And then I picked up the old-fashioned pen and piece of paper, and then I was able, because it unblocked me mentally, to handwrite with my heart a letter, but using words that I really, really wanted to express. So again, it's a tool. It's a tool like something in the kitchen. It's not, doesn't replace you, but that, there, and also I was thinking in the consultant world, there are some tremendous, wonderful consultants in every single branch of the work that we do in nonprofits and philanthropy, et cetera. And finding the right consultants to match your needs is really important, because you can rely now upon a tool to do some things, but then bring in a consultant who's really particularly good at what you're not good at. So for example, in tax preparation, let's just take something that's neutral to us all, that we now may need to use, we can use software to do our tax prep. But there are moments where maybe our taxes become too complicated and we need to bring in a CPA to help. Same thing in our nonprofit jobs. Maybe you can make your philanthropy plan, your event plan, your strategic plan, whatever it is, with the help of software. But then you really need that consultant to come in and, let's say, facilitate in person your strategic planning or board meeting session, or to really do some of those trainings, media training or major gift ask training, that those are more live, that are really focusing in on what that consultant's really good at, as opposed to having them do your admin work for you.
And sometimes I think, or I have felt this way in working in a nonprofit, if you bring in outside help, it's somehow thinking like the current staff doesn't have all the answers, or they feel, but what I learned through it is, say you're doing an event and it's totally fine and it's successful, but the organization is ready to take it to the next level. It's great to get an outside perspective and to bring someone else in and say, hey, we want to glow up, and we need other advice for those kinds of things.
Right. And consultants are also super useful when in just interviewing people. So they could, as we all know, like you can have them come in and interview your donors or interview your staff, et cetera, to get a sense of what's working, what should be unstuck.
Yeah, in a neutral position. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and AI can do that now too. I mean, in the survey tools that we use and other people use, that you can actually upload a transcript. Like, so for example, we could upload a transcript of this conversation we're having and have AI actually do an analysis of, well, how did they interact together, and what were some of the main takeaways and things like that. I mean, there are really cool ways of using it that help us grow in our human ways.
Well, Sophia, I think you and I could just keep chatting along here, but let's see. Let's take some questions from our audience. Again, just a quick reminder, there are icons at the top of your screen. Mm-hmm. If you click there and pop your questions in. We do have a few here. Let's see. Okay. Mission creep. That's a good one. Okay, so we need questions about how to help when the in times of uncertainty and getting unstuck, missions can start to creep. How do you work with that?
Oh, this is a big one. And oftentimes mission creep happens now that we're in the family of of development people here. Mission creep happens often when money is needed. And so somebody has a conversation with somebody at a cocktail party and they say, well, why don't you just do this also? And then somebody thinks that that person's going to give money to fund it. So then we creep our mission toward that potential idea, but then the person never gives money and then you're stuck with the program. I mean, I've been there, and this is a really big one. I had coffee the other day with a person who started a nonprofit, and they have been pulled in all different directions because she is just really needs the revenue. So every time somebody says, do this, do this, do this, she's jumped around. Now she has maybe 6 different versions of her mission. So this is where the board, the executive team need to really be on the same page about what that mission is. And if that's not the case, then it's really not, and that mission isn't affected in every decision that the organization makes, it's very hard to work there. It's very hard to raise money for the organization. So the advice is probably a case-by-case basis, but that is a very difficult thing. I hear about it all the time. And then it's really hard to realize the dreams of the organization. And it's also very hard to work for an organization that doesn't know where it's going.
Yeah, and those things are often just not sustainable, and the operating costs and the long-term.
No, time for a merger.
Yes. A question about being proactive versus reactive. How to implement, kind of risk management. Talk about that.
Right. I love a good enterprise risk management plan. And what that means is that you essentially write down every single thing that could possibly happen negative in your, and whether that, if you operate a cafe, it could be foodborne illness. If you work with people, then it could be slipping and falling. It could be, any number of things. It seems sort of silly to, or not silly, it's not silly at all, but it seems sort of morbid to make a list of all the potential horrible things that could ever happen in the world to your organization. But it actually is somewhat satisfying because you feel like, okay, I have at least know what I don't know. And then you make a list of all of that, and what are some of the mitigating actions that you can take for those cases. And then you can do some scenario planning. So whether that is more conceptual, financial, governance, succession planning, scenario planning about what could happen should any of these things happen. But also you can do some tabletop scenarios. So practicing okay, if we had a monsoon rain and our facility was washed out, this is what we do. We would first call this person. This is our phone tree. Do we have an active phone tree? I mean, I found that now that we're all on Zoom all the time, I don't know anybody's phone number. So if we were to lose Wi-Fi, if we couldn't get on, how do we even contact everybody in the organization anymore? So doing some of that is really helpful, and both on the strategic side, but also on the operations front.
And it's really true. Yeah, there is something satisfying about just getting it down on paper and seeing it and saying, okay, it is unlikely, but if it does happen, we've got it. We're okay. Now let's move on to the issue of today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, well, thank you for those questions. And if you think of something else, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. But we are reaching the end of our hour together. Unbelievable. Sophia, thank you for sharing your time and your insights with us. I know we took away some really valuable nuggets and suggestions. And sometimes it's just good to get it out there and say, hey, these are uncertain times, but we can do it. We're in it together, and we're going to keep moving forward.
Yes, you're in it together. That is true.
Yes. So for all of you in the audience who joined us today, we know you want to be part of the solution, and that's why you're here. So we thank you for all you do.
Yes.
Today's presentation is hosted again by Insightful Philanthropy and PlanPerfect. Sophia and her team are offering 10% off to anyone who mentions seeing this webinar. You can use the QR code that is up on the screen right now that links to her site, or I mentioned our handout session. There is a flyer in there. Just click on the paperclip icon and download her flyer. Or if you're interested in learning more about Insightful, you can learn. We're happy to schedule a customized session with you. Gather either a group from your team or just one-on-one, and we'll welcome a conversation with you. So Sophia, again, I just want to thank you, thank all of our guests. We thank you for your time and your questions. We hope the session was valuable to you. As you exit today, there will be a brief survey. Please take a moment to let us know what you thought about today's session, how we can improve in the future. On behalf of Insightful and PlanPerfect, we thank you for your time. Have a good day. Bye.